guys, I sure come at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Welcome to the video, guys. I am happy to have you all here. We have CyberDoc in the comments yesterday asking, can we get a video on best nukers from each Affinity video? We'd love to see how champs rank for Force, Void, Magic, and Spirit Affinity. Ask and you shall receive. If you guys want to see any ranking videos, any champion guides, any strategy guides for any bosses in the game, let me know in the comments below. I love to take video ideas from the comments, and I really appreciate your feedback. So, without further ado, let's jump into the nukers, guys. All right, guys, we're gonna be quick. I'm gonna show you all the multipliers on all these champions as we go, so you're, can compare and contrast. Keep in mind that it's not just the damage multipliers, though. It's also their base attack or defense or HP, whatever their damage is based on, that dictates how hard their nukes will hit. In this video, we're focusing on AoE nukers, and we're also not gonna include champions that have the instant activation. Champions like Elhane, who's absolutely amazing. Champions like Xavier, champions like Theodore as well. All incredible champions, but we're gonna keep it just to AoE nukes, right? So let's start with Void, and let's start with the most obvious choice here, the queen of PvE nukes inside the game, none other than Seer, with her Karma Burn ability. It deals the most damage, depending on the number of buffs that you have on your team, that you'll ever see in PvE content. You can just evaporate, just decimate the enemy team with this Karma Burn ability. Seer is one of the most important champions that you can pull in this game. If you have her, congratulations. You know what I'm talking about. She just saves you so much time. Next up is going to be Ethos, the old school queen. Sorry, Ethos. Love you, bro.
But you don't know.
The old school king of nukes. Back when I started, back in my day, kids, everybody wanted to get their hand on Ethos. He is a 3-time hitter with a big version now of Weekend. He got a buff there, and he also has Extinguish Life, which does exactly that. Very, very hard-hitting abilities, and he has 2 of them on the AoE, so yeah, definitely including Ethos. Now we're gonna get to, I think, my personal fave. It's iffy.
Just started.
But one of my favorite champions out there, and is Leo the Proud. Forget just Void. I think that Leo is just an insane nuker for every champion in the game compared to everybody. He's up there in my personal top 10 list overall. He's a hard-hitting Rage of the Pride. If this ability is not on cooldown, he can't be CC'd, which is tremendous for the arena. And then the awesome Roar ability, it smacks one of the hardest hitting AoE nukes in the game. You don't have to worry about Affinity, obviously, with all these Void nukers, but the same goes for Leo because he's Void, right? He's Void. There are no bad Affinity matchups. He also has his built-in unkillable a la Skull Crown, who we might as well go ahead and talk about next. These champions are super annoying, especially in the arena. Skull Crown, of course, does have the arena aura lead, and she does make the list with 2 hard-hitting AoE nukes. You can use her really anywhere. You can even use her as a control champion. She's so versatile and just so effective, especially in the arena with that unkillable too. It makes her perfect in case your team doesn't go first. If you go second, sometimes a Skull Crown with 1 HP can still get the job done for you guys, right? All right, next up is going to be one of the few defensive-based nukers on our list. Why do I have all these new champion dots over here? Who am I pulling?
Can you people not see me?
Oh, okay. It turns out I got a few champions. Clan vs. Clan, so I saved all my fragment summons for when the Clan vs. Clan started, so it's all Doom Tower champions, so we're not gonna review those. Sorry for getting sidetracked here, guys. You'll see the next one here, well, not Doom Tower, but a daily login reward champion. Anyway, I digress. By the way, we mentioned him at the top. I haven't digressed yet. Theodore the Savant is insane. Talking about combustion, instant activation, poison, and HP burns on a 3-turn cooldown. What? This champion definitely up on my most wanted list. Calvalac, same thing. But actually, Solus is the guy that we're going to talk about next. Very, very good multipliers. You see a lot of Solus as a defensive go second base nuker, even some go first teams in the arena. Definitely a platinum tier nuker out there. He also got a big buff to his speed and his base defense as well about a year or so ago. But definitely very, very good. Has a strong AoE attack and Reign of Terror, increasing the duration of debuffs on the target by 1 turn as well. Provoke on them as well. I mean, he's doing a lot here in a very, very hard-hitting ability. All right, next up is going to be another one of my faves. It's Genbo the Dishonored. So good old Genbo, man. This dude's a beast. He's a boss. He hits hard. He's got one of those self-buffing abilities, increased crit damage, increased crit rate, and then grants an extra turn. Comes in with Heartless Blitz, and, well, what does he do? He just kills everybody. He just kills everybody. All right, one of the newer additions, I made a whole video on this dude after his buff. It's Constantine the Dayborn. Man, he hits hard with his Rune Shatter, attacks all enemies 2 times. Each hit ignores 10% for each defense for targets under, excuse me.
I told him to be himself. That was pretty mean, I guess.
Block item skill, decreased defense in Leech. Quietude also smacks insane multiplier on the A3 as well. And then he has the Deny Revival from Undead Horde, Demon Spawn, and Knight's Revenant. Deny Revival on all of his abilities. So that's really nice for the arena as well. He's a great PvE nuker, and he has a great hard-hitting A1 to add to all of that. So good on ally attack or counterattack teams. Constantine, if you're just looking for sheer damage, look no further than Constantine the Dayborn. I was really underwhelmed when I first pulled him, but now I'm a fan. All right, next up is going to be kind of an oldie but a goodie. It's Octawander. I included him on the list, guys, over a lot of other really good champions. Again, single target champions not on the list. Obviously, Drakecia would be, you know, right up there if I was ranking those, maybe in a future video. But World of Battle is such a good ability, man. He's got the attack in all battles, 22%, not bad for an aura. An AoE, hard-hitting attack with a heal on himself. He has less than 50% HP. A decreased speed, increased speed on himself, excuse me, and decreased speed on all the enemies. He's doing so much in this ability, and it's on 3-turn cooldown, guys. And then he has a hard-hitting, clever brutality as well, with turn meter steal and a stun. 100% turn meter if he's less than 50% HP. What a great kit. What a great kit. The AoE decreased speed alone on 3-turn cooldown, very valuable on an otherwise fantastic nuker. All right, let's go to my most recent favorites here, guys, and let's talk a little bit about Tamesia. Tamesia is a beast, a monster of a champion. She's an AoE HP burn for 3 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. She also has a stun on targets with 50% turn meter or more. Also has decreased speed on targets with 50% turn meter or less. She's doing so much on this ability. A 3-turn HP burn alone on an AoE on a 3-turn cooldown is great. And then she has Burning Regret. The damage goes up based on how many active HP burns are in the battle, up to 400% extra. This ability can smack for million plus damage, obviously depending on how you have her built. All right, next up is going to be a Lizard Man, guys, and it is, actually, I lied to you, a Skinwalker, guys, and it's none other than, why did I go to Lizard Man and Skinwalkers came up? Am I crazy here?
You chose me.
It is a Lizard Man, and Shigar. Shigar is a monster. This guy, I kind of slept on him. I pulled him. I was excited on the pull, but I'm like, man, you know, where am I going to use him? I'll tell you where I'm going to use him. I'm going to use him anywhere where I want a ton of damage and a decreased defense. So he has poison on everybody for 4 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. And then he has decreased defense for 3 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. So he's got decreased defense for 3 turns on a 3-turn cooldown with the poisons. All right. Does a lot of damage too. Then he has Heartstopper, does a lot of damage on this ability, and then he's instantly attacking all enemies whenever they receive damage from a poison placed by this champion with a decently hard-hitting A1 attack. Very, very good damage dealer. So there we go. Those are our top 10 Void: Seer, Ethos, Leo, Solus, Genbo, Constantine, Skullcrown, Tuok, Shigor, and Tamesia. Who did I snub? I have a feeling I'm forgetting somebody on this list. Not the Void, just entirely, right? On one of these affinities. I like triple checked, but I don't know. Let's get back to it here. Let's go to Magic Affinity with Hefrak, right? A brand new champion. You guys probably have heard his name before. I actually pulled him, very lucky to pull him during a 10-time event for Theodore, but I pulled Hefrak, so I'm not going to complain. Very hard-hitting ability here on the A2. Attacks all enemies, extra hit with targets of less than 50% HP. Each hit ignores 15% of the target's defense. This ability smacks, guys. It really really, really does. Also has an extra turn, increased attack, and increased crit rate as well, a la Genbo. Fantastic nuker. One of really the top nukers in the game. We also have Trunda, obviously, right? I mean, she has this ability, Cloak of Ages, insane multiplier. Granted, second hit is only dealing 60% of damage, but one of the hardest hitting attacks in the game in Cloak of Ages. Then she has Forge Rhythm. If you build her with low accuracy, you're getting one of the best AoE nukes in the game. I still use her in one of my main arena teams on my speed team. Trunda just, I mean, look at her base stats too. Over 1600 attack, 23k HP on a nuker? What? What?
I like 'em big. I like 'em chunky.
Trunda is just an absolute monster, right? Next up is Herndig. Herndig I actually do not have. I wish I did. I didn't go for the fusion. I'm an idiot. I kid. I mean, you don't need every champion in this game. We've talked about that in the past. But I wish I had him, right? I do have him on my free-to-play. Crazy enough. An AoE would decrease deep, but I can't book him up because I have no legendary books on my free-to-play, right? Attacks all enemies, has decreased defense and decreased attack accuracy on a pretty hard-hitting ability. And then he has a Stasis Strike on a 4-turn cooldown. He is fully depleting target's turn meter. It will also attack all enemies if the first attack is critical. So another hard-hitting AoE attack as long as it's critical on his A3 ability. Definitely one of the better nukers out there in the game. I'm going to go to my first legendary that I ever pulled on my entire account, guys, and it's none other than Bigen. He was the first legendary back 3.5 years ago. Bigen smacks. He's got a hard-hitting AoE on every ability. Attacks all enemies if the first attack is critical on his A1. On his A2, he's got the stun, forward charge, his hardest-hitting single attack, but then he has a 2-time attack in Molten Slag that smacks as well, can add up to more damage than his A2, and he's decreasing turn meter with decreased speed. This guy is a monster, especially PvE, but even in the arena, you know, you can't take Bigen. You have to account for Bigen. He can wipe anybody. Very, very fun and effective champion. All right, next up, guys, is going to be none other than another champion that I don't have, and it's why am I going to Knight's Revenant? Man, I'm all over the place today. It's Danang Skullreap. So this guy is a guy we haven't talked about much on the channel. I don't have him, but boy, his multipliers are really, really good. He has an AoE with decreased accuracy and true fear, can't be resisted by certain factions. Then he has a very hard-hitting single target attack on Battle Flow, his A3 ability. A very cool champion. I really like him. I really like him. He looks cool too aesthetically. I mean, look at the... I mean, good God, that's a big cape. That is a big cape you got there, Danang.
I need somebody to help me not have a big heart because my heart is so big. People betray me.
All right, next up is going to be, we're going to go with one of the classics out there, right? It's Foley. Really still one of the top choices in the game, both for Fire Knight. He has a 4-hitter on his A1, 4-hitter on his A2, but also for a Deny Revival ability on Sealed Fate. Granted, a 4 multiplier isn't the hardest that we're talking about compared to some of the other champions, but man, he hits hard, and all enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived. So if you're looking for a reviver, denier, Foley. Look no further than Foley. Really, really fun champion to use. I might be a little bit biased on this one. You guys know I am a big fan of Dark Elhane. Dark Elhane smacks, man. She's a free daily login reward champion, sure. But she's so insanely good, man. She really is. Instant activation on this hard-hitting Majesty ability with decreased speed on an AoE, 3-turn cooldown, 75% chance of landing, and then it's instantly activating every time a freeze is put on this champion. Fills this champion's turn at 25%, instantly activates whenever this champion or an ally receives a freeze debuff. That's insane. Against Torment teams, nuke. Against Ice Golem, nuke. It's great. It's beautiful stuff, guys. Next up is going to be one of the overall, like, just raw sheer damage dealers in the entire game, and it's Ray. She's an AoE on the A1 with decreased defense, and AoE on the A2 with more damage on targets under debuffs, and I think you guessed it, another AoE on the A3 with the freeze, 70% chance of landing on a 6-turn cooldown. Good multipliers all across the board. You add up 3 strong AoE attacks, it's looking like a lot of damage for anybody that she runs into. We have another defensive-based champion that made the list list here today, guys, and it's Ignatius. Ignatius is a beast, man. He's got this hard-hitting Battle Shout ability on a 4-turn cooldown with a provoke 75%, and then he has the HP burn that cannot be resisted on another hard-hitting attack on his A3 ability. So I thought I would include him.
Oh my God, what was I just going to say?
Yeah, I think I don't regret including Ignatius on the list. I think he's just an absolute beast of a champion. And then last but not least, for the Magic Affinity is going to be, of course, Royal Guard, man. The takedown ability is still one of the best enemy max HP abilities inside the game on an AoE. Really, really strong multipliers, even better than, say, Husk, who we'll talk about in just a moment. But Royal Guard, man, I mean, looking for a lot of damage against Hydra Clan Boss, looking for a lot of damage against Spider, anywhere else that doesn't have the damage, you know, capped, excuse me, of enemy max HP champions. Look no further than Royal Guard. Also on, I think, the best Fire Knight team in the game, or at least up there in the conversation. So Royal Guard, still incredibly good. Takedown as A3 is not bad as well. All right, guys, I do want to give a quick little shout out there. Shemnath, I'm loving this champion. Statue of Liberty, I'm loving this champion. This Humbled and Broken is so cool. Really love it, but she just didn't make the list. I chose Ignatius over Shemnath. However, I really, really love her. All right, next up, we're gonna go to the Spirit Affinity, guys. Now things get a little bit different. Magic, there was like a million snubs. There's a million champions I did not include who I love in Magic Affinity. However, in Spirit, it's a little bit more slim pickings, okay? Maybe a couple champions that you wouldn't expect to make the list. Cupidus, I think everybody probably expects. They buffed this dude. He's a hard-hitting AoE on the A1 attack. Damage increases by 15% if the target has any debuffs. Then he has another hard-hitting AoE with HP burn, 100% chance on his A2. And then he has Flame Out, which is an incredibly hard-hitting single-target ability. So yeah, Cupidus, excuse me, definitely makes our list here. I was starting to say Cleopatrax, getting a little bit ahead of myself. She went from one of the worst champions in the game to one of the best nukers out there in the game. If you have not tried the new and improved Cleopatrax, they improved her multipliers, and boy does she smack. Feather Barrage on her A2 ability, 3-turn cooldown, and AoE attack, increased crit rate, and increased crit damage on herself. Have block active skills and targets under Hex, fantastic. And then she has on her A3 ability on a 4-turn cooldown, another AoE attack with increased accuracy on herself and Hex. Also fear on enemies under Hex. Very, very good champion now. And again, I'll mention the same thing I just mentioned. If you haven't tried her out, because before she was buffed, give her a try, pull her out of that vault. You're not going to regret it, man. She's a really, really cool champion. Next up is going to be one of my personal faves, guys. This dude is an old school OG champion, and it's Netheril. I decided to include him on the list over Mashald. Nice AoE potential on the A1, but it is conditional. But I think that Netheril is a slept-on champion. He is slow. His base stats aren't incredible. He does have the A1 and the poisons. Back in the day, we used to know him, at least me, of him just being a poison champion. But he's so much more than that. AoE on the A2, 4-turn cooldown with a stun, 75% stun. Decreased speed of the stun is not, on the target's not under stun, so great control there. And a tremendous control on the Bat Swarm ability. Doesn't hit as hard as the Ghastly Horrors ability, but another AoE, decreased turn meter by 75% on a 4-turn cooldown. A very, very underrated and incredible control champion out there inside the game. Next up is going to be none other than Yanuko. Yanuko is another one of those champions that you can get her, what is she, in the clan shop now? Everybody can get her eventually. And man, she's really good also. On the AoE, she's attacking all enemies 2 times if she's under a veil. So already a very strong, even the odds attack on the A1. On the A2, perfect Veillance champion with an extra turn. So she's going to be under that veil, which is going to be great. On the A3, another Elven Judgment is an insane ability as well. Very, very good multipliers. Removing shield buffs from the target if this champion is under a veil or perfect veil, which she basically always is. It's a 3-turn if the attack is critical on that A2, but it does grant the extra turn. So really, really powerful champion. Next up is going to be a brand new champion. I had to include him on the list. It was between Iron Brago and this dude. I love Iron Brago, and maybe it's a recency bias here because it might be Iron Brago. However, I am such a big fan of Ragash. Ragash, I'm going to include him on the list. He has an AoE stun, hard-hitting ability on Turfer Typhoon, and then he has a decreased defense as well. So he's bringing a guaranteed 100% stun, provided us an Affinity matchup, a hard-hitting nuke, and then he also has decreased defense on there. What? He's also bringing strength and increased speed on everybody, kind of a hybrid champion for a defense-based champion. He's bringing so much increased defense on himself on the A1 as well, which helps him hit harder because his damage is based off defense. Really a big fan of Ragash. Next up, we're going to go over to the Shadowkin faction here, guys, and talk about Genshin. Genshin, I slept on this dude, another decreased defense champion. Really solid multipliers. This one especially, it's a single target, but I think it's over a 5, maybe 5.1 off the top of my head. Multiplier on this ability is ignoring unkillable and it's ignoring shields, but he's filling his turn meter all over the place as well, on the A2 and on the A3 and on the A1 as well, and that just keeps him going and going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny. He does not stop. Genshin, a very, very cool champion. Shout out to YST for turning me on to Genshin. All right, next up is another old school champion here, guys, and it's none other than Ghostbourne. So Ghostbourne is known for having an AoE decreased defense that cannot be resisted. That is, in its own right, incredibly valuable, unique inside this game. But it hits pretty hard. He also has another AoE on the A2, which hits pretty hard as well. An AoE with heal reduction, not, the game-changing ability, but you add 2 pretty strong AoE attacks from a support champion. He might be the first support champion that I have on the list. But yeah, he can smack. He can bring some damage to the table. The fact that you don't need to focus on accuracy when building this champion really does open up some more opportunities and doors to you guys to build him for more attack and more crit rate and crit damage. So definitely a cool kind of combination with the non-resist and the ability to build him in a different way on Ghostbourne. Some of you guys might disagree with that one, but I do not regret it putting him on the list. Next up is Magnar, one of my favorites. The epic champion, probably for my money, him and Genbo are the best epic nukers in the entire game. Percussive Pound just absolutely smacks. It is a very hard-hitting ability, an extra hit on enemies without HP burn, so a ×2 hitter on a 3-turn cooldown makes him an arena beast. Flame of Flames is also a really hard-hitting and good ability. We're gonna have the first rare on the list here, guys. Can you believe it? It's Marquez. I had to include Marquez, man. Crush the Week is one of the best AoE attacks, even for a rare, even for an epic, even for a legendary, she would still make the list. Sure, her base defense is low, her base speed is low, she's a rare champion after all, but she has extra damage if there's a weaken debuff on the opponent, so with the right setup, Orion the Conjurer is my favorite setup for her. She's gonna be smacking 2 hits, but a very, very healthy multiplier there. Incredible champion in Marquez. All right, and last but not least, in Spirit Affinity, guys, is going to be a champion that I'm sure nobody thinks is going to be on the list, but he is, guys, and it's none other than my man. Where am I? There we go, Ash. Get to the right faction. It's Rule. It's Rule the Huntmaster, man. This dude now with the, especially with the Hex buff, he can do some pretty cool things. First of all, picture Hex on the enemy team, right? A Mithrala on the same team as Rule. He also brings Hex to the table as well on the A3 ability. But think about it. Decrease the speed of enemies under Hex. Decrease the resistance of those enemies by 10%. By 5%, excuse me, on the speed. Also, increase the damage enemies under Hex receive by 10%. Decrease the value of heals they receive by 30%. And then we get the Hex buff that adds extra damage on top of that as well on all enemies under Hex. And then he has very hard-hitting abilities. Unleash the Hunt, this ability smacks. And then he has Stalk Prey ability as well. This is placing the Hex on all the enemies, which is nice to have, but really the Unleash the Hunt is the big damage-dealing ability that he's bringing to the table. All right, guys, let's move over to the Force Affinity. All right, guys, now it's time for the Force Affinity nukers, and where else will we start other than Cecilia Flame Tongue? Where are you, Cecilia? There you are. You can't miss those fiery wings from 1,000 miles away, man. She is a big... She got the AoE weaken, she got decreased defense if there's 2 enemies under HP burn, and then she's instantly activating HP burns. What? 3-turn cooldown, insane. She has the HP burn on everybody, then attacks them. Grants an extra turn if the HP burn is placed. Are you kidding me? This kit is just out of this world. One of the better damage dealers inside the entire game. Next up is going to be another epic champion. A lot of epics make the list, which is really cool to see. Only 1 rare, but a lot of epics. And it's going to be, why am I in chat? What? Am I crazy? Did I just click on Knight's Revenant? Jeez, man. Anyway, it's Thylesia, guys. One of the better hex placers out there when attacking enemies under decreased defense, which he has on a 3-turn cooldown. 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown, but then she has the extension as well. When she's attacking somebody under decreased defense, has a 50% chance of placing a hex on them as well, which makes her, again, one of the most dependable hex placers out there in the game. 2 hard-hitting AoE attacks on her A2 and her A3 ability, both on a 3-turn cooldown, decreased defense, and the extension makes her just an incredibly versatile damage dealer out there in the game. Next up is going to be the king of all nukers for PvP content. It's none other than the Candyman Canderfon, previously the laughingstock of Raid Shadow Legends, one of the worst legendary champions in the game. They gave him a massive buff, and now Butcher's Glee is one of the hardest hitting AoE attacks in the game, especially in the arena. You see him everywhere in the arena. He also has a self-buff ability, Perfect Veil. He's doing more damage under Perfect Veil as well. You can read from the Shadow's passive, really helps synergize with the rest of his kit, and he has one of the hardest hitting A1 abilities in the game as well, as if it couldn't get better. All right, the next one is a champion that not a lot of people talk about, guys, but Abyss. I'm a massive fan of Abyss. She has mass impalement, on a 3-turn cooldown with decreased defense, and then Divine Wrath. It smacks. This ability is really, really hard hitting. It's just like one of those, she does it so nonchalantly too. She's just like, bump, Divine Wrath, everybody's dead, Armageddon has struck. Abyss, really, really great damage dealer, an underrated nuker in the game. Speaking of underrated nukers in the game, how about Fushan? Fushan, man, I slept on this guy for a long time. I did a video on him probably about a year ago now, but boy, he can deal some really serious damage. He has speed in all battles as well. He's a pretty fast for a nuker at 106 base speed, 4 times at random with decreased defense on a pretty hard-hitting A3 ability, and then he has a ×2 hitter with a stun a la Syl the Drakes, only it hits a lot harder on his A2. Also, a pretty hard-hitting A1 with a 25% chance of placing an extra hit on that already hard-hitting ability. So Fushan is definitely a really, really fun and nice nuker out there. For those of you who may have him vaulted, consider removing him. Next up, we have none other than Rabar, another champion that used to be kind of a laughingstock of the game. He always had one of the hardest hitting abilities inside the entire game and attacks all enemies with merciless assault. Damage increases if the target's under the CC debuffs. This really hits extremely hard, over 1600 base attack, great multipliers, and then a hard-hitting decreased defense on Wild Swing as well. Rabar really has one of the highest kind of overall damage potential in the game. Not the best champion because he's pretty one-dimensional, I guess. I mean, if you're looking for a lot of damage and decreased defense, you could do a whole lot worse, right? So I guess he's not that one-dimensional. He's a really good debuffer / damage dealer in Rabar. Let's go ahead and talk about, I can't believe she's still on the list, guys, but she is. Zarga. Zarga has been power crept a little bit, right? There's no doubt about that, in my opinion.
Wow.
There's no doubt about that factually, in my opinion. Okay, that makes a lot of sense there, Ash. Crack armor is great, but it's on a 4-turn cooldown, decreased defense for 2 turns. 75% chance on the second 2 hits. So it's just not incredibly dependable as it is on somebody who has it on a 3-turn cooldown, 100% land rate, right? That being said, don't underestimate Zarga because she can really hit hard, especially when you kill somebody with that A2 ability, Devastate. You come back in there and instantly activate that crack armor ability. Now let's talk about one of the best nukers inside the entire game. She used to be the biggest laughingstock as well. She sort of is, but I'm telling you, man, Thea the Toon Angel is actually not that bad. She is this ability, Hex Reaper. If you get all the extra crit damage, 300% extra damage, 50% for each enemy under Hex, can be the best ability, the hardest hitting nuke inside the entire game. Very cool kit. She has a veil with a perfect veil with an extra turn. You guys know how I love extra turn abilities. Also, a 50% chance of true fear on enemies for 1 turn whenever an enemy loses 30% or more of the max HP in a single hit, which oftentimes is a lot, especially on waves in dungeons, anywhere against bosses, except for against bosses, of course. And each critical hit decreases the cooldown of Not of This World by 1 turn. So if she's hitting both crits on the A1, this is going to go from a 4 all the way down to a 2-turn cooldown. And keep in mind that grant an extra turn allows you to then takes Hex Reaper 1 less cooldown as well. So really nice synergy on that A1, on that that part of it. Each critical hit decreasing the cooldown, and then taking your more Verdict Veils, and then again, more Hex Reapers as well to come of it. She also has attack in all battles by 30%, so definitely not as bad as she used to be. She's the first Doom Tower Secret Room hard champion out there that you can get. Only a couple more champions to talk about here, guys. And yeah, let's just go with them. Let's just go with Husk, man. I mentioned that we were going to talk about Husk later on in the video. Well, now is later on in the video, boys and girls. Husk is, he's a really cool champion. He's an HP-based enemy max HP champion who also has a pretty reliable stun on a 4-turn cooldown. So he's bringing a little bit extra to the table, can help you out for a control champion. But boy, Despair can really smack, especially Hydra Clan Boss. Anytime you need a Force Affinity enemy max HP nuker, look no further than Husk. He also has a Provoke on his A1. Not too bad. I use him against Magma Dragon, right? You can get some provokes and get a lot of damage too. Hydra Clan Boss especially. And then last but not least, guys, is going to be none other than Blood Gorged. He's going to be our last champion that we talk about today. Start with the A3. It's not an AoE ability, but Decapitate is an incredibly hard-hitting single-target nuke that will block revival as well. Great for the arena. But really, this AoE Enraging Beast, he's kind of borderline making the list there. He was, him and a few other champions were my final decision of this video, but I decided to include Blood Gorged, a really decent, hard-hitting A2 AoE attack nuke in his kit. Put one of each target skills on cooldown as well. Really nice control there, sneaky nice control. A lot of champions, you know, Valkyrie, Battle Khazar, etc., they only have one active skill, and it's putting it on cooldown. So, little mini warlord for you guys there as well. He also brings decreased defense on his A1 at a 75% land rate. That's really solid for 2 turns. And break defense, his A1 is pretty hard hitting as well. So a good all-around champion, has that great in the arena, especially for the A2 and the A3. So there you go, guys. You let me know who I forgot. I know I forgot somebody. I know I forgot. You let me know why I'm wrong in the comments below. Thank you again for the video idea. I appreciate it. Make sure you reminder now that the videos come to a conclusion to let me know. Let me know what you want to see next year on the channel. This is it's a group experience. It's a group effort, and I appreciate the hell out of you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, take care, guys.